Hi, welcome to this presentation about migrating an application from Spring Boot into Quarkus. Hope you enjoy the presentation and you at least get something interesting from it. So first of all, I would like to give you, a bit of introduction of which is the context that you can expect on this presentation. So obviously I will present who am I, then what can you expect from the whole presentation, and basically then I will try to answer why I decided to do this migration and which are the goals that I pretend to obtain. And then obviously when you have a migration from A to B, then you need some data in order to see if that it is worth it. So this is a small application being migrated, but it should be like an experiment for you to know what can you expect when you try to migrate a real application. So I think those metrics that I will give at the end probably can give you a bit more of context. Don't take those metrics as I don't know, as super deep and detailed information. It's only an order of magnitude that you can expect. So I think, those are good metrics in order to see if you need to or you are going to get any benefit of migrating any application. Finally, references that I think they can help you on doing your own migration, or if you want to know more, then use those references that they help me at the moment of doing the migration. So first of all, who am I? Well, I'm Jonathan Vila. I'm Java champion. I'm coming from Barcelona, Spain, and I'm JAG co-leader at the Barcelona Java user group and also co-founder of the JVCN Conf. It's a conference that we host in Barcelona every year, and we expect to have also this next July physically. So we are very eager and excited about it. Also, I'm software engineer at Red Hat in the Keycloak department in the Cloud Native subteam. Here you can find my Twitter handle, my email if you want to reach me in order to do some questions, my blog post where you will find posts related to this migration or test containers or any other technologies that I find interesting, and my GitHub account where you will find all my Red Hat work and also my side projects. So what can you expect from this presentation? So basically it's opinionated. So I mean, it's my experience. I decided to take this migration this way, but you can find yours, or you can use different libraries or different approaches. This talk doesn't want to be like a magistral lecture, so I'm not trying to teach you anything. So basically I'm showing here my experience doing this migration and all the steps that I followed. In the end you will have the link also for my GitHub project where you can find different commits doing the migration. And yeah, as I said, basically it's experience that I will show you. Also, it's something that works. I mean, the motivation for this migration was not to do like the best migration possible, but doing the fastest and the less effort migration that I could do in order to have something working with Quarkus. And yeah, so basically this works, but probably you can find some better ways of doing the migration. And as I said before, this is not the way. I mean, there are several ways of doing a migration, and yeah, I took one path, but you can take yours. Versions for Spring Boot and Quarkus. Well, here you can see Spring Boot 2.4.2 and Quarkus 2.4.0. This is not the latest version of Quarkus, but that's the latest one that I used in the migration. So, first of all, let's talk about what is Quarkus. For those of you that do not know what's this new technology, I suppose that every one of you already knows what it is, Spring Boot. So let's talk about Quarkus and a brief introduction. Also, during my presentation, you will see some retro games images that are very, very nice for me to remember those days. Hopefully, they take a smile from you too. So, what it is Quarkus? So basically, Quarkus is a technology that it is very aligned with Kubernetes. So it can talk to Kubernetes very easily, and has this Kubernetes native in mind. That means having memory footprint very low, and also fast startup times. Why this is relevant for Kubernetes? Well, because when you have several applications running, so with scalability, then you need that they start fast in order to scale fast, and also that they consume the less memory possible, just because if not, you are going to pay a lot for resources. So now is when you are considering having small applications that can do specific functions, just in order to not pay too much to the public hosts. So in this case, it's also tailored for GraalVMs. So, and that means an application using Quarkus can run on a JVM machine. So you can run it as usual, doing Java and specifying the jar. But it can also produce a native artifact. So that means it doesn't need an external JVM to run. You can take that artifact and run it in several machines without anything else installed. Also is an optimized version of the application, trying to do all the work during build time and not on runtime. Also, one of the main benefits of using Quarkus is that it relies on standard libraries, on libraries that have been there for quite a long time and you have been using probably massively. So it's not like you need to learn new tricks. It's the old tricks that you already know. So for instance, Kafka, Hibernate, REST-easy, or Vertex, among others. But it has lots of them. So the Quarkus key facts, it's way faster starting the application because it does all the work possible during build time. Also, it is smaller in terms of memory footprint. Well, it is focused on being easy to code. So, I mean, it is not reinventing the wheel, so you don't need to learn new tricks. The libraries that are already there, yeah, you can use them. And they try to make things as easier as possible for the developer. Well, it's open source, so that's fine, at least for me. And they have lots lots of releases coming out every now and then. So it's I don't know, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks you will have a new release and fixing things, adding more stuff, improving things. So it's a very live project with a lot of people behind, and they are doing a lot of things constantly. And as I said before, those libraries that are being used inside, well, with Quarkus, called as extensions, well, it has lots of them. We will see now. So Quarkus extensions, more than 150, from Kafka, Camel, Keycloak, Spring, Vertex, REST Easy to Microprofile, OpenShift, Kubernetes Client, Flyway, Hibernate, well, you name it. There are lots of them, and probably you are using some of them. So this is one of the important things, that you can continue working the same way if you were using standard libraries, but using Quarkus. So there's not a big change in your usual way of coding. So sometimes I tend to think on Quarkus as something that it's there, does things, but you are not super aware that you are using it. So because you are still continue working with the standard extensions. Regarding the evolution, well, it's been a very fast evolution, coming from the beginning in the end of 2018, and we've come to the end of 2021, and yeah, lots of releases have appeared, and after 2 weeks, well, adding more stuff and fixing bugs. So it's super fast, the evolution of the project. Regarding the usual way that people show Quarkus, well, apart from the numbers that you see here, the important thing is the order of magnitude. So in terms of memory, if you use a traditional cloud native stack and you go to Quarkus, you can basically reduce memory by half. And going from Quarkus to Quarkus native, that you are even reducing way more the memory. To move from Quarkus JVM to Quarkus native, it's almost only a matter of adding -p native into the command line. So that's very easy. It doesn't involve you to change anything in your code, and voila, you have a native artifact instead of a JVM one, just because adding one small part in the command line. So in the Maven clean package your application. But apart from the memory, you also have fast startup time. You can see here, well, this is an example. You come from more than 4 seconds to a bit less of 1 second, just because going to Quarkus in JVM mode. But if you go to native, as I said, only -p native, you come from more than 4 seconds to 16 milliseconds. So that's dramatically changing the paradigm. So what we have now is that the same usual application that was taking a lot to start, that was consuming a lot of memory. Using Java, you can go to consume way less memory and start way faster. With that, you can increase the density of your cluster. So where you had one application, now you can have 10. And you can scale up and down super fast. So even you can consider going to serverless with Java, now considering Quarkus and native approach. So in order to also give an idea of the magnitude of the project, well, there are more than 500 contributors to Quarkus. Only in 1 month there are lots of issues closed and new issues open, pull requests. As you can see, there are lots and lots of pull requests merged. So it's super alive, this project. And now you can find even a place where you can even write your own extension for your tool that is not already there, and you can have an extension hub where you can publish yours. So that's also very, very important and very nice that it is very open. So regarding the migration, now you have an idea of who is talking to you, what you can expect from this presentation, and what is Quarkus. Okay, so now let's move to the migration. So the migration is taking an already created application by Spring Boot. So I'm taking a sample, the Spring Pet Clinic REST application, and then I am migrating it to Quarkus. So why I decided to migrate? Well, basically because my experience with the Spring Boot is that it was very easy to develop with several libraries. It really abstracts you from the complexity, but it was taking a lot to start because it is doing a lot on runtime. Tests were eternal and it's very heavyweight. So I mean, it consumes a lot of memory. And finally, there are several things that are happening under the hood. So when you start the application, you see that, and you check the log, you see that there are lots of things happening there. I was not expecting those. I was not requesting them, but they are happening. So I heard of Quarkus, and they say, okay, we are easy to develop applications. Okay, it's not going to take me a lot, hopefully, to learn how to do something in Quarkus. It's fast starting, it's lightweight, it doesn't consume a lot of memory, and also it's GraalVM compatible, so I can produce native artifacts that can go to a serverless approach. That means probably I can pay less on public clouds if I can put more applications in the same cluster, or even if I can use the the serverless approach. Therefore, I'm only paying for specific functions and not paying when my application is simply resting. So the project that I took was the Spring Pet Clinic REST, just because it had all these libraries: Spring Data, Spring Web, security, documentation for the API, actuators, micrometer, CDI, AOP, and catch. Basically, these are, I would say, common libraries that you will find in several Spring Boot applications. So it can serve as an example, right? So in Quarkus, those libraries need to be like rewritten or transformed or migrated. So what do we need to use in Quarkus? Well, instead of Spring Data, we are going to use Hibernate Panache. Instead of Spring Web, JAX-RS, Quarkus Security, OpenAPI, SmallRye Health, Microprofile Metrics, CDI Spec, and Quarkus Catch. There is no such thing as aspect-oriented in Quarkus, just for its because of its basics, and also because Quarkus doesn't look at AOP as a real need that can produce a good fit for the Quarkus application. So we don't have AOP. So let's talk about the migration steps. Regarding the dependency injection, well, once we have added the Quarkus dependency, then it's a matter of replacing autowired by inject if you are still using the Spring annotation instead of the standard one. And then the beans declaration are using application scoped in this project instead of component or bean or service. It has auto injection on constructors and it's lazy by default, so that's very convenient. I didn't find any big issues with this migration, and also we can just annotate the beans to be injected depending on the profile or a config property that is being used. So very easy to migrate, and there are no private members on the injection, so at least they have to be package visible. Regarding the JPA repositories, well, it's a matter of implementing Panache repository, or in this case Panache repository base. Why going to the base one? Just because the default class for identities is long, but in the Spring repository it was used integer. So what I did is, in order to not change the rest of the code, what I did is to simply specify here which is the class that represents the identity. So that's basically it, and that's it. So it's a matter of implementing this, and you will have all the methods for your entity, and that's it. Very easy. But there is one drawback, that is we don't have derived query methods, so those find by name and blah blah blah, that the Spring is implicitly creating the query under the hood. We don't have that. Regarding Spring REST, well, it's a matter of moving to JAX-RS, and we need to rewrite the annotations. So if you are using request mapping, then you need to break down this annotation into 3, but if not, it's a matter of a string replace, so using one annotation by another, and the result is very similar, so that's fine. Regarding the Spring security, well, in this case we are going to use Quarkus security, and we need to rewrite a bit, just because with the Spring it is pre-authorized, and you can express you can have an expression language for defining which are the roles that are allowed. With the Quarkus security, well, it's roles allowed, and then it's a list of roles that are expected. And regarding the security also with the users and passwords, well, in this project it was persisted into a database, and for that we are going to use Elytron security, JDBC, and then it's a matter of configuring in the properties the way to obtain the users, and that's it. So it will persist it will take the security from the database. Everything is straightforward in the migration, but as I said, we don't have expression language on the roles, and you need to specify the list of roles, but this is the only drawback. Regarding cross origin, it's very easy. It's a matter of simply adding these 2 properties in the properties file, and that's it. So basically that was the case. The only drawback that I found is that with Spring you can configure cores at the controller level, and with Quarkus I didn't find a way to do it, so it's global. But in this project it didn't mean any problem. Regarding the metrics, well, we are going to add the small right metrics extension, and just doing that we will have all the metrics in the output on the endpoint. But the thing is that by default the metrics that are being used that don't have the same notation as with the micrometer, that there is the one that the Spring is using. But if you add this toggle in the properties, this Quarkus small right metrics micrometer compatibility equals true, then you will have the same notation. In this project, aspect-oriented was being used in order to get metrics for all the ORM calls. And as I said, we don't have that with Quarkus. So either you annotate all the methods with counted and timed, or you use interceptors from CDI to get that metrics. Or we will see another approach in a second. As I said, it is being very easy to have the metrics. In this case, I was using the microprofile metrics, but I could be using micrometer extension, and then it would be totally the same as the Spring one, and we don't have AOP to get those metrics. We will see now in a minute how we can do it. Regarding the validation, well, we have to go from Spring validation to Hibernate validator. The behavior and the look and feel are very similar, but yeah, we need to rewrite the exception handler on the Spring one, need to be rewritten as an implementation of exception mapper, but more or less is the same, so there's no big deal. Regarding Swagger, well, adding the extension OpenAPI, and you will have all the information already in the endpoint. And if you want to add, well, more declarative information about your OpenAPI, then, well, you can add OpenAPI definition annotation with this information, or you can use these properties in the properties file. That it is very easy, and you will have exactly the same. There are, well, not too many drawbacks, but there is no REST path scan configuration. So with the Spring, you can just simply specify which are the packages that you want to include in the Swagger information. I didn't find the way to do the same with Quarkus. So in theory, you cannot hide an endpoint from the documentation. And yeah, pros, you also have the Swagger UI out of the box that you can also enable in production, and yeah, basically that's it. So now we are coming back to the AOP for application metrics. So as I said, with Spring, it was using aspect-oriented. With this around expression, it will get information from all the methods for any repositories. So, or either we annotate manually all the methods, or we use interceptors, or we add this property, Quarkus Hibernate ORM metrics enable true, in the properties file, and then we will have all the metrics to for the access to the database. It's even giving us way more metrics than the Spring approach. So it's perfect, and it involves very small effort. Well, as I said, we don't have AOP, but with that annotation with that property, it was very easy to get all the methods metrics. So that's perfectly fine. Regarding the local caching, well, they are using similar approaches. With Quarkus, we need to add the catch extension, that it is using the library caffeine, and annotate every method that we want to catch, and then specify the different properties for every catch in order to configure how it has to behave. With the rest, regarding test, well, here we need to modify everything. So our tests need to be rewritten because the approach is very different. So yeah, you need to use the rest assured library in order to do the tests. I prefer it to the mock MVC, but that's a particular taste. And there is I didn't find a way to simulate roles in the test. So you need to really create a user, assign it to a role, and then inject that user into the test in order to check that the security is happening as you want. With the test resources, well, in the test, you usually don't use the real database. So you used an in-memory database, in this case, H2. So in Quarkus, this is based on test resources. So we are going to specify an H2 database test resource, and then our tests are going to run starting first an H2 database. So it's very easy and very fast to use it. With mocking, well, we are going to use the inject mock annotation and the Quarkus JUnit 5 Mockito, and then we can inject mocks for our bins. That's very easy. So we reach a part where I tell you, okay, forget it. Yeah, we can migrate an application using this approach. I did it, but there is a faster way of doing this. That it is using the Spring API, but in Quarkus. So if you are using any of these libraries, dependency injection, web, data, security, cloud config server, Spring Boot properties, Spring catch, and Spring schedule, there is an extension for that in Quarkus. So it's a matter of adding the extension and don't touching the code, because the annotations are already supported. So what Quarkus will do is use those annotations that you're using, that in fact are interfaces, and it will put the implementation that it is needed. So you will think you are still using a Spring, but in the end what you are using is Quarkus. But you can still be working, coding using the Spring extensions, Spring annotations. So that's very convenient. You can do it for also Spring dependency injection using the annotations that are already inside the extension. So that's very easy. With the Spring data, the same, and you can even use the derived query methods. That's perfectly fine. So yeah, it's very easy to get used to those extensions, and it's very fast to use them. Even with security, you can do exactly the same. But remember that with those Spring extensions, you always have to check if the extension is covering all your needs. So it could be that you are using some special cases or some corner cases or advanced features, and the Quarkus extension is not covering them. So you should check, but I would say that in most of the cases, the Quarkus extension is more than enough, exactly. So we've reached to a part where we have migrated the application, and I have done this migration 2 times. So first is we have the Spring Boot application on JVM. Then we have the Quarkus migration using the first libraries. And then we have the same application using the native approach with the Quarkus standard approach. And then we have the using the Spring extensions also in native mode. So now you can compare the difference between the different approaches. And yeah, comparing the Spring Boot that it comes from the GitHub repository, well, it takes 4 seconds in build time, and it produces 48 megabytes of a user jar. And Quarkus doesn't improve this at all. So it takes way more memory, way more time, and it produces an artifact that it is similar or way bigger than the one with the Spring Boot. But I would say that we are not very concerned about build time, because this usually happens in our CI environment. So what we are very interested on is on boot time. So boot time implies 4.7 seconds in Spring Boot, and it takes more than 600 megabytes of memory. But if we go to JVM, we are consuming 3.4 seconds to start, and it produces less than half of the memory. This is in JVM. But if we go native, we are taking less than half a second, and we are taking only 21 megabytes of memory. So way far from the Spring approach. Either we use the standard way or the Spring way, more or less the numbers are very similar. So they are less than half a second, and they are consuming around 20-ish megabytes of memory. So I would say that you have increased a lot, even using the Quarkus Spring native extensions. That should mean you don't touch most of your code, just simply replace the dependencies and work on the tests probably, and then you can move from around 5 seconds to less than half a second and more than 600 of megabytes of memory to around 20-ish megs of memory. So that's a big win, at least for me. Okay, so that was mostly the conclusion about this talk. So now what I want to is to share with you some references in order for you to go further if you need to or if you want to. So here you have the repositories for the application, the Spring Fed Clinic, and the Quarkus 1 that is in my repository. You need to move between the Quarkus branch and the Spring branch, I think, and then you will have the different approaches. Then you have here the Quarkus main website, the Twitter handle, and a very nice place to learn that it is developersredhat.com, where you can find several tutorials about Quarkus. And yeah, the Quarkus Dev mailing list, where you can ask questions and learn with the answers. So that's very interesting point too. Regarding the interactive tutorials, where they are using Katacoda, that it is a cloud environment with the tutorial on the left, and you will have even an IDE on the right just to touch and produce the code, and even an OpenShift web console where you can just simply see the result. So you can try Quarkus without touching your local machine and having everything ready for working and learning. That's very convenient. You have tutorials for Spring developers for Kafka, Hibernate, Prometheus, you name it, several tutorials. Also, it's a very important piece of information that it is the cheat sheet that is produced by my colleague Alex Soto, where you will find all the different new functionalities coming in every new version of Quarkus. Very interesting to check. If you want to start coding with Quarkus, code.quarkus.io, you will select all the libraries that you need, and then it will produce a zip package with the skeleton and even the test. Also, I totally recommend you to take a look to MTA, Migration Toolkit for Application. It's a tool that will help you in order to migrate applications from different migration paths. One of them is Spring Boot to Quarkus. So we will statically analyze your application and will tell you which are the things that you need to change in order to do this migration successfully. And it covers several libraries and several features. So I totally recommend you to use it. It's open source, you can download it and you can use it for free. It will give you the hints directly in your code. And even you can use an Eclipse, Eclipse and VS Code, and also an IntelliJ plugin in order to analyze your application. Also, I would like to share with you these different real use cases from big companies, especially focused on the Vodafone Greece that replaced Spring Boot with Quarkus. So I totally encourage you to check these real experiences that can give you more context about this migration. And this was everything that I had to share with you. I hope you enjoyed, that you liked it, and at least that it has sparkled a bit of curiosity on you in order to check Quarkus and how to migrate from Spring Boot to Quarkus. Again, here are the ways that you can find me using my Twitter handle, my email, my blog, and my GitHub account. Thank you very much and have a nice day.